Welcome to Mystery at 221B, where Sherlock Holmes' secrets come to life.
In the shadowed halls of Ashbourne Hall, a priceless relic, the Crimson Scepter holds a deadly secret. When a solicitor is brutally murdered and a lady's sapphire bracelet vanishes, Sherlock Holmes, the meticulous Belgian detective, steps into a web of lies, greed, and betrayal. Is the scepter a cursed treasure or a cunning fraud? Who among the manor's elite hides a killer's heart? Unravel the mystery with Sherlock's little grey cells as he exposes a truth that could shatter a dynasty. Chapter 1. The Crimson Scepter. In the waning days of October, when the mists of autumn clung to the rolling hills of Devonshire, the quaint village of Ashbourne lay draped in an uneasy calm. Nestled within its verdant embrace stood Ashbourne Hall, a sprawling Jacobean manor whose ivy-clad towers and mullioned windows spoke of centuries past. The estate, owned by the venerable Lord Reginald Ashbourne, was a monument to faded grandeur, its halls echoing with the whispers of ancestral triumphs and tragedies. On this particular evening, the air was thick with anticipation, for the household was gathered to celebrate the unveiling of the Crimson Scepter, a relic of inestimable value enshrouded in legend. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the faithful chronicler of his friend Sherlock Holmes's exploits, had arrived at Ashbourne Hall at the behest of Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, Lord Reginald's younger sister. The invitation, penned in her elegant hand, had been cryptic yet urgent, hinting at a matter requiring the utmost discretion. Hastings, accustomed to the peculiarities of such summons, had persuaded Sherlock to accompany him, though the great detective had initially demurred, citing a preference for the quiet order of his London apartments. The journey to Devonshire had been uneventful, save for Sherlock's relentless critique of the inefficiencies of the British railway system. As their carriage rattled along the winding lanes toward Ashbourne Hall, Hastings observed his friend's profile, sharp, aquiline, and framed by the faint glow of twilight. Sherlock's eyes, keen as ever, betrayed a flicker of curiosity, though his demeanor remained one of fastidious detachment. "Mon ami," Sherlock remarked, adjusting his immaculate cuffs, "this affair of Lady Eleanor's reeks of melodrama. A scepter, no doubt encrusted with garish jewels, and a family steeped in secrets. I trust we shall find something to amuse my little grey cells." Hastings chuckled, accustomed to Sherlock's penchant for dismissing the gravity of a case until its intricacies unfolded. "You'll find, Sherlock, that Lady Eleanor is not one for theatrics without cause. Her letter spoke of unease, of whispers among the guests. And this Crimson Scepter, why, it's said to be cursed." Sherlock's lips curled into a faint smile. "Curses, Hastings, are the inventions of idle minds. But secrets are the currency of crime. We shall see what this scepter conceals." Carriage drew to a halt before the grand oak doors of Ashbourne Hall, where a liveried footman ushered them into the warmth of the manor. The entrance hall was a study in opulence. A vast chandelier cast a prismatic light across polished marble floors, and portraits of stern-faced Ashbournes glowered from the walls. Lady Eleanor, a striking woman of 40 with auburn hair and a composed demeanor, greeted them with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Monsieur Sherlock, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice low and melodic. "Your presence is a balm to my nerves. I fear something dreadful looms over this house." Sherlock inclined his head, his eyes scanning her face with the precision of a jeweler assessing a gem. "Madam, you speak of dread, yet your hall is filled with gaiety. Pray enlighten us." Lady Eleanor led them to a drawing-room where the assembled company awaited. The guests, a carefully curated circle, represented a cross-section of wealth, ambition, and hidden motives. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, a robust man of 60 with a florid complexion, presided over the gathering with forced joviality. His wife, Lady Margaret, a pale and nervous woman, hovered at his side, her eyes darting toward the velvet-draped pedestal where the Crimson Scepter rested. The scepter itself was a marvel, a slender rod of gold, its handle encrusted with rubies that glowed like embers in the candlelight. Its head bore a single, flawless sapphire, said to have been plucked from an ancient crown. Legend held that the scepter brought fortune to its rightful owner, but ruin to those who claimed it unjustly, a tale Lord Reginald recounted with theatrical relish. Among the guests were figures of note. Sir Percival Langley, a financier with a reputation for ruthless cunning, sat with a glass of port, his sharp eyes never straying far from the scepter. Miss Clara Beaumont, a young heiress and distant cousin of the Ashbournes, radiated charm but seemed distracted, her fingers twisting a silk handkerchief. Dr. Julian Warrender, the family physician, was a quiet man with a scholarly air, his gaze lingering on Lady Margaret with an intensity that did not escape Hastings' notice. Lastly, there was Mr. Victor Crane, a solicitor and executor of the Ashbourne estate, whose pinched features and nervous manner suggested a man burdened by secrets. As the evening progressed, the conversation turned to the scepter's history. Lord Reginald, emboldened by brandy, spoke of its origins in a medieval court, where it had been wielded by a king whose guests, as if weighing their souls against the relic's gleaming surface. Dinner was a lavish affair, though the undercurrent of tension was palpable. Sir Percival spoke loudly of investments, his voice grating on Lady Margaret's nerves. Miss Beaumont laughed too brightly at Lord Reginald's jests, while Dr. Warrender remained silent, his fork moving with mechanical precision. Mr. Crane, meanwhile, excused himself briefly, citing a need to review papers in his room, a detail Sherlock noted with a raised eyebrow. As the clock struck 10, the company retired to the drawing-room for the scepter's formal unveiling. Lord Reginald, with a flourish, drew back the velvet cloth, revealing the relic in all its splendor. A collective murmur rose from the guests, but it was swiftly drowned by a scream, piercing cry that shattered the room's decorum. Lady Margaret, standing nearest the pedestal, clutched her throat, her face ashen. "It's gone," she gasped, pointing to her wrist, where a diamond bracelet had moments ago sparkled. "My bracelet! Stolen! Right here!" The room erupted in confusion. Lord Reginald bellowed for the servants, Sir Percival demanded a search, and Miss Beaumont sank into a chair, her eyes wide with alarm. Dr. Warrender moved to Lady Margaret's side, his calm demeanour a stark contrast to the chaos. Only Sherlock remained unmoved, his gaze fixed on the scepter, which stood untouched on its pedestal. "Curious," he murmured to Hastings. "A bracelet vanishes, yet the scepter remains. Why steal a trinket when a treasure lies within reach?" Hastings frowned. "You suspect this is no ordinary theft?" Sherlock's eyes gleamed. "Mon ami, I suspect nothing yet, but I observe. The bracelet is a distraction, perhaps, or a prelude. The game, Hastings, has begun." As the household scrambled to search for the missing bracelet, Sherlock rose, his movements deliberate. He approached the scepter, examining it with a magnifying glass he produced from his pocket. His fingers traced the rubies, lingered on the sapphire, and paused at the base, where a faint scratch marred the gold. "Interesting," he said softly. "Very interesting." Lady Eleanor, watching him, wrung her hands. "Monsieur Sherlock, do you think this theft is connected to the scepter?" Sherlock turned, his expression inscrutable. "Madame, everything in this house is connected to the scepter. its value, its legend, its curse. But rest assured, Sherlock shall unravel this tangle. The little grey cells, they are already at work. As the guests dispersed, some to their rooms, others to assist opening act of a far darker drama. Chapter 2. The Shadow Falls. The morning after the theft of Lady Margaret's bracelet dawned grey and sombre, the mist curling around Ashbourne Hall like a shroud. The household awoke to an atmosphere thick with suspicion. The gaiety of the previous evening replaced by a palpable unease. Captain Hastings, roused early by the clatter of servants, found himself reflecting on the peculiar events of the night before. The theft, though seemingly trivial, had set the stage for something far graver. He could sense it, even if he lacked Sherlock's uncanny knack for discerning the threads of a mystery before they fully unraveled. Sherlock himself was already awake, seated at a small writing desk in their guest quarters, his posture as immaculate as ever. A cup of tea, untouched, sat beside a notebook in which he had scribbled a series of cryptic diagrams and annotations. His eyes, bright with the intensity of a mind fully engaged, flicked up as Hastings entered. "Bon matin, Hastings," Sherlock greeted, his tone brisk. "I trust you slept well, despite the little drama of last night?" Hastings rubbed his eyes, still heavy with sleep. "Hardly, Sherlock. The whole affair has me rattled. A bracelet stolen under everyone's noses, and that scepter just sitting there, untouched. It's dashed peculiar." Sherlock's lips twitched in a faint smile. "Peculiar, yes, but not without purpose. The thief, whoever they are, is playing a game of misdirection. The bracelet is a bauble, a distraction. The true prize remains the Crimson Scepter, and I suspect our culprit is merely testing the waters." Before Hastings could press further, a sharp cry echoed through the manor, chilling the air with its raw desperation. It came from the direction of the grand staircase, and without a word, Sherlock was on his feet, his movements swift and precise. Hastings followed, his heart pounding, as they descended into the entrance hall. There, sprawled at the foot of the staircase, lay Mr. Victor Crane, the solicitor. His body was unnaturally still, his eyes wide and unseeing, a thin trickle of blood seeping from a wound at the base of his skull. A heavy candelabrum, its silver tarnished by the impact, lay beside him, its candles scattered like fallen soldiers. Above on the landing, Lady Eleanor stood frozen, her hands pressed to her mouth, her face a mask of horror. "Good heavens!" Hastings exclaimed, rushing forward. He knelt beside Crane, checking for a pulse, but the man's skin was already cooled to the touch. "He's dead, Sherlock. Murdered by the look of it." Sherlock's expression was unreadable as he surveyed the scene, his eyes darting from the body to the candelabrum, then up to the staircase. "Indeed, Hastings. A most deliberate act. Observe the angle of the wound, struck from above, with considerable force. This was no—" Reginald, his face flush with shock, pushed through the crowd of servants, his voice booming. "What in God's name has happened? Crane dead? Impossible!" Lady Margaret, supported by Dr. Warrender, appeared at the edge of the group, her eyes brimming with tears. "Oh, Reginald, this is dreadful. First my bracelet, now this. Our home is cursed." Sir Percival Langley, ever the pragmatist, folded his arms and fixed Sherlock with a hard stare. "Well, Monsieur Sherlock, it seems your visit is timely. A theft last night, a murder this morning. What do you make of it?" Sherlock ignored the financier's tone, his attention fixed on the candelabrum. He crouched beside it, producing his magnifying glass to examine its surface. "Curious," he murmured. "The candelabrum is heavy, yet there are no signs of a struggle. Mr. Crane did not fight his attacker. He was taken by surprise, perhaps by someone he trusted." Miss Clara Beaumont, who had joined the gathering, let out a stifled sob. "But who would do such a thing? Mr. Crane was a quiet man, always buried in his papers. He had no enemies." Sherlock rose, brushing his hands together. "Mademoiselle, in my experience, every man has enemies, whether he knows it or not. Mr. Crane was the executor of the Ashburn estate, a position that invites both envy and resentment. We must ascertain what he knew and what he may have threatened to reveal." Lord Reginald, regaining his composure, ordered the servants to cover Crane's body and summon the local constable. "This is a nightmare," he muttered. "The scepter's unveiling was meant to be a triumph, not a tragedy." Sherlock's gaze sharpened. "The scepter, Lord Reginald. Tell me, was it secured last night after the theft?" "Of course," Lord Reginald replied, indignant. "I locked it in the safe myself in the library. Only I have the key." "Then let us verify its safety," Sherlock said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The company moved to the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound tomes and dominated by a massive oak desk. Lord Reginald opened the safe, revealing the Crimson Scepter nestled in its velvet case, its rubies glinting ominously. Sherlock examined it closely, his fingers tracing the same scratch he had noted the previous evening. "Intact," he said softly, "but not untouched. This scratch fresh, deliberate. Someone has handled the scepter, perhaps to test its authenticity or to conceal something within it." Lady Eleanor, standing nearby, clutched her shawl. "Monsieur Sherlock, do you believe Mr. Crane's death is connected to the scepter?" "Madame," Sherlock replied, "I believe everything in this house is connected to the scepter. Its presence is a magnet for greed, fear, and betrayal. But fear not, Sherlock shall untangle this web." As the constable arrived, a stout man named Inspector Grimsby, whose deference to Sherlock was tinged with resentment, the detective began his inquiries. He requested a timeline of the previous night's events, focusing on the hours after the bracelet's theft. The servants, flustered but cooperative, confirmed that Mr. Crane had retired to his room around 9:30, claiming he needed to review documents. No one had seen him leave until his body was discovered. Sherlock turned to the guests, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, I require your movements from the moment the bracelet was stolen until this morning. Precision, if you please. Lies will only complicate matters." Sir Percival spoke first, his tone clipped. "I was in the smoking room until 11, discussing business with Lord Reginald. Then I went to bed. Lady Margaret, her voice trembling, said, 'I was so shaken by the theft that Dr. Warrender gave me a sedative. I retired immediately after the incident and slept until morning.' Dr. Warrender nodded. I remained in the drawing room until 10:30, then checked on Lady Margaret before retiring myself." Miss Beaumont hesitated, her cheeks flushing. I couldn't sleep after the commotion. I walked in the garden for a time, then returned to my room around midnight." Lord Reginald confirmed his presence in the smoking room with Sir Percival, adding that he had checked the scepter's safe before bed. Lady Eleanor, meanwhile, claimed to have stayed in her private sitting room, writing letters until 11. Sherlock listened, his face impassive, though Hastings knew his friend was cataloguing every word, every pause. When the interviews concluded, Sherlock requested to see Mr. Crane's room. The solicitor's quarters were Spartan, with a neat desk piled with legal documents and a single suitcase. Sherlock examined the papers, his fingers pausing over a ledger marked with cryptic notations. "Most intriguing," he said, pocketing a small slip of paper. "This ledger details transactions involving the Ashbourne estate, debts, investments, and a curious entry about a contingency fund. Mr. Crane was not merely a solicitor, Hastings, he was a keeper of secrets." As they left the room, Sherlock paused at the top of the staircase, reconstructing the moment of Crane's death. "He was struck here," he said, pointing to the landing. "The candelabrum was taken from that table yonder. The killer moved swiftly, silently. But why here? Why now?" Hastings shivered. "It's as if the scepter itself is casting a shadow over this house." Sherlock's eyes gleamed. "A poetic notion, Hastings, but shadows are cast by light, and I intend to shine a very bright light on this affair." As the household mourned and whispered, Sherlock retreated to his thoughts, his little grey cells already weaving the threads of a crime that was far from simple. The Crimson Scepter, with its cursed legacy, stood at the heart of the mystery, and Hastings knew that only Sherlock could unravel its deadly enigma. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Sherlock. The morning's grim discovery had cast a pall over Ashbourne Hall, and by midday, the manor's grandeur seemed to mock the tragedy within its walls. The local constable, Inspector Grimsby, bustled about with an air of self-important efficiency, his notebook filled with hastily scrawled details that, to Captain Hastings' eye, lacked the precision necessary for such a case. It was Sherlock, however, who commanded the room's attention, his presence a quiet force amid the chaos. His arrival at the scene of Mr. Crane's murder had been met with a mixture of relief and wariness, for the Belgian detective's reputation preceded him, even in the remote reaches of Devonshire. Sherlock stood at the foot of the grand staircase, his eyes tracing the trajectory of the fallen candelabrum. The body of Victor Crane had been discreetly removed to a guest room, pending the coroner's arrival, but the bloodstain on the marble floor remained, a stark reminder of the violence that had shattered the household's veneer of civility. Hastings, standing nearby, watched as Sherlock's gaze lingered on the candelabrum, now resting on a side table under the inspector's watchful eye. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, his voice low and deliberate, "observe the candelabrum. It is not merely a weapon, but a clue. Its weight suggests intent, yet its placement on the landing table implies opportunity. The killer seized the moment, but was it premeditated or a sudden act of passion?" Hastings frowned, struggling to keep pace with Sherlock's reasoning. "You mean to say the murder might not have been planned?" Sherlock's lips curved into a faint smile. "I mean to say nothing, Hastings, until the facts speak for themselves. But consider this. Mr. Crane was struck from above, yet there are no signs of a struggle. He was comfortable with his assailant, or at least unaware of the danger. That narrows our field considerably." Inspector Grimsby, overhearing, approached with a scowl. "Monsieur Sherlock, I've got men searching the grounds and questioning the servants. We'll have this sorted in no time. Likely a vagrant or a disgruntled footman, mark my words." Sherlock's eyes gleamed with polite disdain. "Inspector, your zeal is commendable, but your assumptions are premature. A vagrant does not strike with such precision, nor does a footman wield a candelabrum from his master's table. No, this is a crime of intimacy, committed by one within this circle." Grimsby bristled, but said nothing, retreating to confer with his constables. Sherlock, undeterred, beckoned Hastings to follow him to the library, where the Crimson Scepter remained locked in its safe. The room was quiet, save for the ticking of a grandfather clock, its pendulum a metronome to Sherlock's thoughts. Lord Reginald. He was a dry fellow, all ledgers and contracts. What could he have done to provoke such violence? Sherlock examined the scepter again, his magnifying glass hovering over the scratch he had noted previously. "Lord Reginald, the question is not what Mr. Crane did, but what he knew. As executor of your estate, he held sensitive information, debts, inheritances, perhaps secrets that others wished to keep buried." Lord Reginald paled. "Secrets? I assure you my affairs are in order. Crane was meticulous, loyal." "Loyalty, monsieur, is a fragile thing when wealth and power are at stake," Sherlock replied, his tone measured. "Tell me, who else has access to this safe?" "No one," Lord Reginald insisted. "The key remains on my person at all times." Sherlock nodded, though his expressions suggested skepticism. "Very well. Let us proceed to the interviews. I wish to speak with each member of the household, alone in the drawing room." The interviews began promptly. Sherlock seated in a high-backed chair, his hands folded neatly in his lap, his eyes sharp and unyielding. Hastings, acting as an unofficial scribe, noted the detective's methodical approach, each question designed to probe not only facts but the psychology of the speaker. First was Lady Margaret, her delicate features drawn with grief. "I scarcely knew Mr. Crane," she said, her voice trembling. "He was always so formal, so distant. Last night, after my bracelet was stolen, he offered his sympathies, but that was all." Sherlock leaned forward slightly. "Madame, your bracelet. Describe it precisely, if you please." "It was a gift from Reginald," she said, her eyes misting. "Diamonds set in platinum with a sapphire clasp. It was unique, irreplaceable." "And you noticed its absence immediately after the scepter's unveiling?" Sherlock pressed. "Yes," she replied, hesitating. "I felt a tug at my wrist, but with the crowd I thought it was an accident. Then I saw it was gone." Sherlock's gaze lingered on her, as if weighing her words against an unseen scale. "Merci, madame. You may go." Next came Sir Percival Langley, his demeanour brusque and impatient. "I've no time for this nonsense, Sherlock," he said, lighting a cigar. "Crane was a nobody, a paper pusher. If someone killed him, it was likely over some petty grudge." Sherlock's voice was silk over steel. "Monsieur, you were in the smoking room with Lord Reginald until 11. Did you see Mr. Crane after the theft?" "No," Sir Percival said, exhaling a plume of smoke. "He scurried off to his room, as usual. Man was always hunched over his blasted ledgers." "And your interest in the Crimson Scepter?" Sherlock asked, his tone deceptively casual. Sir Percival's eyes narrowed. "It's a fine piece, worth—" Clara Beaumont followed, her youthful beauty marred by anxiety. She twisted her handkerchief as she spoke, her voice soft. "Mr. Crane was kind to me, in his way. He helped me understand my inheritance, though he was always so secretive about the details." Sherlock's eyebrows rose. "Secretive, mademoiselle? In what way?" She hesitated, glancing at Hastings as if seeking reassurance. "He would never discuss the estate's finances openly. He said it was for my own protection, but I sensed he was hiding something." Sherlock nodded, dismissing her gently. Dr. Warrender was next, his scholarly demeanour unruffled despite the morning's horror. "Mr. Crane was in good health," he said, adjusting his spectacles. "I saw no signs of distress last night, though he seemed preoccupied." "Did you speak with him after the theft?" Sherlock asked. "Briefly," Dr. Warrender replied. "He asked if I had seen anyone near Lady Margaret during the unveiling. I told him I was too far away to notice." Sherlock's eyes gleamed. "And your movements after administering Lady Margaret's sedative?" "I retired to my room," Dr. Warrender said firmly. "I read until midnight, then slept." Lady Eleanor was the last to be questioned, her composure strained but intact. "Mr. Crane was a trusted adviser," she said, "but I confess, I found his manner unsettling at times. He seemed to know too much about everyone." "An astute observation, madame," Sherlock said. "Did he ever speak of the Crimson Scepter?" "Only in passing," she replied. "He mentioned its value, but also its history. He seemed wary of it." When the interviews concluded, Sherlock retreated to the library, where he paced before the fireplace, his mind a whirl of calculations. Hastings, trailing behind, ventured a question. "Sherlock, what do you make of it all? The theft, the murder, surely they are connected." Sherlock paused, his fingers steepled. "They are threads in the same tapestry, Hastings, but the pattern is not yet clear. The bracelet's theft was a diversion, perhaps to create chaos. Mr. Crane's death, however, was personal. He knew something worth killing for." Hastings frowned. But what? The scepter's safe, and no one's mentioned any other valuables. Sherlock's eyes twinkled with a rare spark of excitement. The scepter, Hastings, is more than a jewel. It is a symbol, a key to something greater, and Mr. Crane, poor soul, stumbled upon its secret. As the day wore on, Sherlock requested access to Crane's papers, which were brought to the library under Inspector Grimsby's grudging supervision. Among the ledgers, Sherlock found the slipper protected. As evening fell, the manor seemed to close in on itself, the mist outside mirroring the fog of suspicion within. Sherlock, undaunted, prepared for the next phase of his investigation, his little grey cells humming with the promise of revelation. The afternoon light filtered weakly through the leaded windows of Ashbourne Hall, casting long shadows across the drawing room where Sherlock conducted his meticulous inquiries. The murder of Victor Crane had transformed the manor's atmosphere from one of strained festivity to outright dread, and the guests moved with the cautious tread of those who sensed danger lurking in every glance. Captain Hastings, seated near the fire with his notebook, marveled at Sherlock's composure, a calm, almost serene focus that belied the gravity of the situation. The detective's eyes, sharp as a falcon's, missed nothing, and his questions, though delivered with impeccable courtesy, were designed to pierce the facades of those he interrogated. Sherlock had requested a second round of interviews, this time delving deeper into the alibis and motives of the household. The Crimson Scepter, still locked in the library safe, loomed over the proceedings like a silent accuser, its rubies and sapphire whispering of secrets yet to be uncovered. Hastings, ever the faithful observer, noted the tension in the room, the way Lady Margaret's hands trembled as she sipped her tea, the guarded glances Sir Percival Langley cast toward the door, the nervous fidgeting of Miss Clara Beaumont's fingers. Even Dr. Warrender, usually so composed, seemed unsettled, his scholarly air tinged with unease. Sherlock began with Lord Reginald, whose florid complexion had taken on a sickly pallor since the morning's grim discovery. The lord sat heavily in an armchair, his hands gripping the armrests as if to anchor himself against the storm of events. "Monsieur," Sherlock began, his voice smooth as velvet, "you have stated that you were in the smoking room with Sir Percival until 11 last night, after which you checked the scepter's safe and retired. Can you confirm the precise time you locked the safe?" Lord Reginald frowned, his brow furrowing. "It was just after 11, I believe. I checked the scepter, locked the safe and went to bed. Margaret was already asleep, thanks to Dr. Warrender's sedative." Sherlock's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you, Sir Percival, who had joined them, shifted uncomfortably. I was in the smoking room until 11, as I said. I didn't leave the room all evening." Sherlock's gaze lingered on him, as if weighing the weight of his words. "And you saw no one near the staircase or Mr. Crane's room before retiring?" "No one," Sir Percival replied curtly. "The house was quiet, save for the fuss over Lady Margaret's bracelet." Sherlock dismissed him with a nod and turned to Miss Clara Beaumont, whose delicate features were drawn with anxiety. She clutched a handkerchief, her eyes darting nervously toward Lady Eleanor, who stood by the window, observing silently. "Mademoiselle," Sherlock said gently, "you mentioned walking in the garden after the theft. Can you recall the exact time you returned to the house?" Clara hesitated, her voice soft. "It was near midnight, I think. I was upset about the bracelet and needed air. The garden was dark, but I stayed near the terrace." Sherlock's expression remained inscrutable. "And did you see or hear anything unusual? A sound, perhaps, or a figure moving in the shadows?" Her cheeks flushed. "No, nothing. It was quiet, save for the wind. I saw no one." Dr. Warrender was next, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the other's agitation. "I retired shortly after ensuring Lady Margaret was settled," he said, adjusting his spectacles. "I heard nothing unusual, though I confess I was preoccupied with my own thoughts." "And these thoughts, Doctor?" Sherlock pressed, his tone deceptively casual. "They concerned Mr. Crane, perhaps?" Dr. Warrender stiffened. "Only in a professional capacity. He seemed healthy, if distracted. I had no reason to suspect foul play." Sherlock's interviews continued, each guest's responses revealing little but adding to the tapestry of suspicion he was weaving. Lady Eleanor, when questioned, spoke of Crane's reserved nature. "He was always so careful," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "He never shared his concerns, but I sensed he was troubled by something, perhaps a matter of the estate." When the interviews concluded, Sherlock retreated to the library where he requested Crane's papers once more. Inspector Grimsby, still bristling at Sherlock's involvement, had reluctantly provided access to the solicitor's belongings, and Sherlock pored over the ledger and the cryptic note, "CS, 3rd ruby, 2nd facet. Check safe." Hastings watched as Sherlock examined the documents with the precision of a surgeon, his fingers pausing over entries detailing loans to Sir Percival and a disputed inheritance clause involving Miss Beaumont. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, his voice low, "these papers are a map of motives. Crane was not merely managing the estate, he was auditing it. There are discrepancies here, sums unaccounted for, and a curious reference to a contingency fund tied to the scepter." Hastings frowned. "You think Crane discovered something worth killing for?" Sherlock's eyes gleamed. "I think, Hastings, that Crane was a man who knew too much. The scepter is the key, not merely for its value, but for what it conceals. That scratch on its base, the note about the 3rd ruby, it suggests a hidden compartment or mechanism." Sherlock requested to examine the scepter again, and Lord Reginald, with visible reluctance, opened the safe. A faint irregularity in the setting caught his attention. "Most curious," he murmured. "The ruby is not fixed as the others are. It moves ever so slightly." Before he could investigate further, a servant entered, breathless. "Monsieur Sherlock, sir, we found something in Mr. Crane's room. A hidden letter, tucked inside a book." The letter, written in Crane's meticulous hand, was addressed to Lord Reginald. It spoke of irregularities in the estate's accounts, suspicions of embezzlement, and a warning. "The scepter holds more than wealth. Verify its authenticity." The letter was unsigned, as if Crane had been interrupted before completing it. Sherlock's expression was one of quiet triumph. "This, Hastings, is the thread that binds our mystery. Crane suspected the scepter was not what it seemed, a fake perhaps, or a vessel for something else. His discovery cost him his life." As evening approached, Sherlock gathered the household in the drawing room to discuss the letter. The tension was palpable, each guest eyeing the others with suspicion. Sir Percival's jaw tightened at the mention of embezzlement, while Miss Beaumont's eyes widened, her handkerchief twisting in her hands. Lady Margaret clutched Dr. Warrender's arm, and Lord Reginald's face grew redder with each word. "Mesdames et messieurs," Sherlock said, his voice commanding silence, "the letter confirms that Mr. Crane was investigating a matter of grave importance. The Crimson Scepter is at the heart of this affair, but it is not the jewel itself that matters. It is what it hides. I shall require access to a jeweller's tools to examine it further." Lord Reginald protested, but Sherlock's authority was undeniable. As the household dispersed, Hastings felt a chill settle over him. The scepter, with its cursed legacy, was no mere relic. It was a Pandora's box, and Crane's murder was but the first consequence of its secrets. Sherlock, undaunted, prepared for the next phase of his investigation. his little grey cells humming with the promise of truth. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The atmosphere in Ashbourne Hall had grown taut as a bowstring, each tick of the grandfather clock in the library amplifying the unease that permeated the manor. By late afternoon, the discovery of Victor Crane's letter had sent ripples of suspicion through the household, and the Crimson Scepter, locked once more in its safe, seemed to cast a malevolent shadow over all who dwelt beneath its roof. Captain Hastings, ever attuned to the undercurrents of human behavior, noted the strained glances and hushed whispers among the guests, each seemingly eager to deflect scrutiny from themselves. Sherlock, however, remained an island of calm amid the storm. Across from him in the library, marveled at the detective's ability to maintain such composure when murder and deceit hung so heavily in the air. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, his voice low as he examined Crane's ledger once more. "The letter we found is a beacon, illuminating the motives that swirl around this scepter, but we must be wary. Our culprit is cunning, and they have laid traps to mislead us." Hastings frowned, his notebook open but untouched. "Traps? You mean someone is deliberately pointing us in the wrong direction?" Sherlock's eyes gleamed with a flicker of amusement. "Precisely, Hastings. In every mystery, there are red herrings, false clues designed to obscure the truth. Here, they abound. The theft of Lady Margaret's bracelet, for instance, too convenient, too theatrical, and now Mr. Crane's death has shifted suspicion to the most obvious candidate." As if on cue, Inspector Grimsby entered the library, his face flushed with self-satisfied certainty. "Monsieur Sherlock," he declared, "we've made a breakthrough. One of the footmen, a lad named Thomas, was seen lurking near the staircase last night. He's got a history of petty theft, and he was dismissed this morning for insubordination. I've sent men to apprehend him." Sherlock's expression remained impassive, though Hastings detected a faint tightening of his jaw. "Inspector, you are swift to act, but slow to think. Tell me, what motive would a footman have to murder the estate solicitor? And why use a candelabrum from the landing table when a knife or cudgel would suffice for a thief?" Grimsby bristled. "He's a known troublemaker, monsieur. Likely he stole the bracelet, and Crane caught him in the act. A moment of panic, and—" He gestured vaguely as if the rest were self-evident. Sherlock steepled his fingers, his voice soft but cutting. "Panic, Inspector, does not account for the precision of the blow that killed Mr. Crane, nor does it explain why the scepter, the true prize, remains untouched. No, this Thomas is a convenient scapegoat. You would do well to look closer to home." Grimsby muttered something unintelligible and stormed out, leaving Sherlock to return to his examination of the scepter, which Lord Reginald had reluctantly allowed him to retrieve from the safe. Using a jeweler's loupe borrowed from a local craftsman, Sherlock focused on the third ruby second facet, as indicated by Crane's cryptic note. The ruby, unlike its companions, was slightly loose, its setting concealing a minuscule catch. "Most intriguing," Sherlock murmured, his fingers deftly probing the mechanism. With a faint click, a small compartment within the scepter's handle sprang open, revealing a tightly folded piece of paper. Hastings leaned forward, his breath catching as Sherlock carefully extracted it. The paper, yellowed with age, bore a diagram of the scepter. Below them, in a spidery hand, were the words, "The true treasure lies beneath." Sherlock's eyes sparkled with triumph. "This, Hastings, is the heart of the matter. The scepter is not merely a jewel, it is a key to something greater hidden within Ashbourne Hall. Crane discovered this, and it cost him his life." Before Hastings could respond, Lady Eleanor entered, her face pale but composed. "Monsieur Sherlock, the servants are in a panic over this footman, Thomas. They fear he'll return to harm us. Is there truth to the inspector's suspicions? Sherlock folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket, his expression inscrutable. Madame, the inspector chases shadows. Thomas may be a thief, but he is no murderer. The true killer walks among us, cloaked in respectability. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened. You believe one of us? I believe nothing, Sherlock interrupted gently. I observe, and I observe that this household is a nest of secrets, each guest hiding something. The bracelet, the murder, the scepter, they are pieces of a puzzle, and I shall fit them together. To test his theory, Sherlock requested a detailed map of Ashbourne Hall, which Lord Reginald provided from the estate's archives. The map, a beautifully inked parchment, detailed the manor's labyrinthine corridors, hidden passages, and cellars. Sherlock studied it intently, his finger tracing a line to a disused wing beneath the east tower. The coordinates, he said softly, point to a location below the manor, a vault perhaps, or a hidden chamber. This is what Crane sought, and what his killer fears we will find. As evening fell, Sherlock proposed a bold move. He would gather the household for dinner, ostensibly to discuss the footman's arrest, but in truth to observe their reactions to his probing. The dining room, with its long mahogany table and flickering candelabras, was a stage for deception, and Sherlock played his role masterfully. The guests assembled, their faces a gallery of unease. Sir Percival, his cigar ever present, scoffed at the idea of Thomas as the killer, though his eyes darted nervously towards the scepter, now displayed on a sideboard for effect. Lady Margaret, still shaken, clung to Dr. Warrender's arm, her gaze avoiding the blood-red rubies. Miss Clara Beaumont, seated beside Lady Eleanor, toyed with her fork, her earlier vivacity replaced by a quiet dread. Lord Reginald, at the head of the table, attempted to maintain decorum, though his forced laughter rang hollow. Sherlock, seated opposite Hastings, steered the conversation with surgical precision. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice carrying a quiet authority. The theft of Lady Margaret's bracelet and the murder of Mr. Crane are linked by a single thread.
Percival's cigar paused mid-air. Lady Margaret's hand flew to her throat, and Miss Beaumont's fork clattered against her plate. Dr. Warrender's eyes narrowed, while Lady Eleanor's lips parted in astonishment.
A treasure?
Lord Reginald blustered.
Preposterous! The scepter is valuable enough without fanciful tales.
Sherlock's smile was enigmatic.
Is it, monsieur? Mr. Crane thought otherwise, and his curiosity led to his demise. Someone in this room knows the truth, and they will go to great lengths to protect it.
The room fell silent, the weight of Sherlock's words settling like dust. Hastings, watching the guests, noted the subtle signs of guilt. Sir Percival's clenched jaw, Lady Margaret's trembling fingers, Miss Beaumont's averted gaze. Even Dr. Warrender, usually so composed, seemed to withdraw into himself. As the meal concluded, Sherlock rose, his demeanour calm but resolute. Tomorrow, I shall explore the East Wing, guided by the scepter's secret. I invite any who wish to join me, though I warn you, the truth is a dangerous companion. The guests dispersed, their faces etched with fear and suspicion. Hastings, following Sherlock to their quarters, felt a chill that had little to do with the autumn night. "Sherlock, you're stirring the pot deliberately. Aren't you afraid of provoking the killer?" Sherlock's eyes twinkled with a rare spark of mischief. "Mon ami, a provoked killer is a careless one. Let them make their move. Sherlock is ready." As the manor settled into an uneasy silence, the Crimson Scepter's shadow loomed larger, its secrets poised to unravel the fragile bonds of Ashbourne Hall. The stage was set, and Hastings knew that the next act would bring them closer to the heart of the Enigma. Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail. The morning broke over Ashbourne Hall with a heavy, oppressive stillness, the mist clinging to the manor's ancient stones like a veil of secrets. The events of the previous day, Victor Crane's murder, the discovery of the hidden compartment in the Crimson Scepter, and Sherlock's provocative dinner announcement had left the household in a state of barely concealed agitation. Captain Hastings, roused by the soft clink of teacups as a maid prepared breakfast, felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon him. The scepter, with its cryptic map and whispered promise of treasure, seemed to draw every occupant of the manor into its orbit, and Hastings knew that Sherlock was poised to unravel its secrets with his customary precision. Sherlock, as was his habit, was already awake, standing by the window of their guest quarters, his silhouette framed against the grey dawn. In his hand was the folded paper from the scepter's compartment, its spidery script and coordinates now the focal point of his relentless scrutiny. Hastings, rubbing sleep from his eyes, joined him, noting the detective's air of quiet intensity.
Turning. Today we venture into the heart of the mystery. The coordinates in this note point to a location beneath the east wing, a cellar perhaps, or a hidden vault. But it is not the treasure itself that intrigues me. It is the contradiction it reveals. Hastings frowned, his mind struggling to keep pace. Contradiction? You mean the scepter's secret? Sherlock's lips curved into a faint smile. Precisely, Hastings. The scepter is a masterpiece, yet its compartment was crafted with such subtlety that only a keen eye would notice. Why conceal a map within a jewel already worth a fortune? And why kill Mr. Crane to protect it? The answer lies in the details. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Lady Eleanor entered, her face pale but composed, a small leather-bound book in her hand. "Monsieur Sherlock," she said, her voice low, "I found this among Mr. Crane's effects while assisting the inspector. It was hidden beneath a floorboard in his room. I thought you should see it." Sherlock took the book, his fingers tracing its worn cover. It was a journal, its pages filled with Crane's meticulous handwriting, notes on the estate's finances, cryptic references to the scepter, and, most intriguingly, a detailed description of a conversation with Sir Percival Langley. The entry, dated 2 days before the murder, read, "SP insists on immediate sale of the scepter, claims it will cover debts, refuse to disclose source of urgency, suspect ulterior motive." Sherlock's eyes gleamed. "A most illuminating find, madame. This journal is a window into Mr. Crane's final days. He was not merely a solicitor, he was a detective in his own right, sniffing out deception." Lady Eleanor hesitated, her hands twisting together. "Do you believe Sir Percival is involved in Mr. Crane's death?" Sherlock's expression was inscrutable. "I believe nothing, madame, until the facts align. But this entry suggests Sir Percival had a pressing interest in the scepter, an interest that may have clashed with Mr. Crane's discoveries." Determined to pursue the coordinates, Sherlock requested Lord Reginald's permission to explore the East Wing. The Lord, still shaken by the murder, agreed, though his reluctance was palpable. "That wing has been unused for decades," he said, leading them through a maze of corridors. "It's all dust and cobwebs now. I can't imagine what you hope to find." The East Wing was a stark contrast to the manor's polished grandeur. Its halls were dim, the air thick with the musty scent of neglect. The map from the scepter's compartment guided them to a narrow staircase descending into a cellar, its stone walls slick with damp. At the bottom, hidden behind a stack of rotting crates, was a heavy iron door, its lock rusted but intact. Sherlock examined the lock with his magnifying glass, noting faint scratches around the keyhole. "This door has been opened recently," he said softly. "The scratches are fresh, the rust disturbed. Someone has been here. Perhaps Mr. Crane himself." With Lord Reginald's assistance, they forced the door open, revealing a small vault lined with shelves. Most were empty, but one held a dusty ledger, its pages brittle with age. Sherlock opened it, revealing records of the Ashbourne family's dealings centuries ago, transactions involving the scepter, including a cryptic reference to a guardian's pact tied to its safekeeping. "This ledger," Sherlock said, "confirms that the scepter is more than a relic. It is a symbol of an ancient obligation, perhaps a debt or a secret the Ashbournes swore to protect. Mr. Crane uncovered this, and it led him to his doom." Hastings, peering over Sherlock's shoulder, noticed a faint mark on the vault's floor, a scuff, as if something heavy had been dragged across it. "Look here, Sherlock," he said, pointing. "Could this be another clue?" Sherlock knelt, his fingers tracing the mark. "Well observed, Hastings. This scuff suggests movement, a chest perhaps, or a hidden panel. The vault holds more secrets than it reveals." Their exploration was cut short by a cry from above. A servant, breathless, reported that Miss Clara Beaumont had collapsed in the drawing room, overcome by nerves. Sherlock and Hastings hurried back, finding Clara pale and trembling, attended by Dr. Warrender. Her eyes, wide with fear, met Sherlock's as he approached. "Monsieur Sherlock," she whispered, I saw something last night in the garden. A shadow, moving near the east wing. I was too frightened to tell you before." Sherlock's gaze was piercing but gentle. "Mademoiselle, describe this shadow. Every detail, if you please." "It was tall, cloaked," she said, her voice faltering. "It moved quickly, towards the cellar stairs. I thought it was my imagination, but now, with Mr. Crane's death—" Sherlock nodded, his mind clearly racing. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your courage in speaking now is invaluable." As Dr. Warrender administered a mild sedative, Sherlock drew Hastings aside. "The shadow Clara saw is no phantom, Hastings. It is our killer, or an accomplice visiting the vault. The scuff mark, the ledger, the scepter's map, all point to a hidden truth beneath this manor." That evening, Sherlock gathered the household in the library, the scepter once again displayed on its pedestal. His tone was calm but commanding as he addressed them. "Mesdames et messieurs, the Crimson Scepter is not merely a jewel, but a key to a secret guarded for centuries. Mr. Crane discovered this, and his curiosity cost him his life. I urge you, if you know anything, speak now, lest more blood be spilled." The room was silent, but the air crackled with tension. Sir Percival's cigar burned low, Lady Margaret's hands trembled, and Lord Reginald's face grew redder. Hastings, watching closely, noticed Dr. Hand linger near his pocket, as if clutching something, a letter perhaps, or a weapon. As the guests dispersed, Sherlock whispered to Hastings, "The killer is growing restless, mon ami. The clue in the vault, Clara's shadow. They are pieces of the puzzle, but the contradiction lies in the timing. Why kill Crane before securing the treasure? The answer is close, Hastings, very close." The night settled over Ashbourne Hall, the mist thicker than ever, and Hastings felt the weight of the mystery pressing down. Sherlock, undaunted, prepared to probe deeper, his little gray cells alight with the promise of revelation. The Crimson Scepter's secret was within reach, but so too was the danger that guarded it. Chapter 7. More lies surface. The oppressive gloom that had settled over Ashbourne Hall seemed to deepen with each passing hour, the manor's ancient walls absorbing the weight of secrets and suspicions. By the morning of the third day since Victor Crane's murder, the household was a cauldron of unease, each guest and servant moving with the cautious deliberation of those who feared to tread too heavily on the truth. Captain Hastings, roused by the distant chime of the village church bells, found himself reflecting on the mounting complexity of the case. The Crimson Scepter, with its hidden compartment and cryptic map, had revealed a tantalizing glimpse of a greater mystery, but it was Sherlock's relentless probing that promised to lay bare the heart of the affair. Sherlock was already at work, seated at a small table in their guest quarters, surrounded by a meticulous arrangement of notes, the scepter's map, and Crane's journal. His eyes, bright with the intensity of a mind fully engaged, flicked up as Hastings entered, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Bon matin, Hastings. Sherlock said, his voice crisp. "The little grey cells have been busy, and I sense we are approaching a critical juncture. The vault, the ledger, Miss Beaumont's shadow, these are not isolated incidents, but threads in a tapestry of deceit." Hastings, still grappling with the intricacies of the case, poured himself a cup of tea. "You're certain the killer is among the household, Sherlock? That footman, Thomas, still seems a likely suspect to Grimsby." Sherlock's smile was tinged with exasperation. "Mon ami, Inspector Grimsby chases phantoms. Thomas may be a thief, but he lacks the finesse for this crime. No, our killer is cunning, intimate with the manor's secrets, and driven by a motive far greater than a stolen bracelet." Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock. A maid, her face pale, announced that Lady Margaret wished to speak with Sherlock urgently. The detective rose, adjusting his immaculate cuffs, and beckoned Hastings to follow. They found Lady Margaret in the morning room, her delicate features drawn with anxiety, her hands twisting a lace handkerchief. "Monsieur Sherlock," she began, her voice trembling,
"I cannot bear this silence any longer. I must confess something I should have told you sooner." Sherlock's eyes narrowed, though his tone remained gentle. "Madame, the truth is always welcome, no matter how late it arrives. Speak, if you please." Lady Margaret glanced nervously at the door, as if fearing eavesdroppers. "It concerns my bracelet. I did not tell you the whole truth. It was not merely a gift from Reginald. It was a family heirloom passed down through my mother's line. Its sapphire clasp matched the scepter's stone, and Victor Crane, he noticed it." Sherlock leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Noticed it, madame? In what way?" She hesitated, her eyes brimming with tears. "He asked me about it, the day before the unveiling. He said the clasp resembled a jewel he'd seen in an old record of the scepter's history. He seemed suspicious, as if he thought the bracelet and the scepter were linked." Sherlock's fingers steepled, a sign of his mind racing. "And you did not mention this earlier because—" "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid it would cast suspicion on me or worse on Reginald. Our finances have been strained, and Victor was auditing the estate. I thought he might accuse us of tampering with the scepter." Hastings, scribbling in his notebook, felt a surge of excitement. "Good Lord, Sherlock, do you think the bracelet's theft was meant to hide its connection to the scepter?" Sherlock's expression was inscrutable. "It is a possibility, Hastings. The bracelet may be a clue or another red herring. Merci, madame, for your candour. It shall not be forgotten." As Lady Margaret withdrew, Sherlock turned to Hastings, his voice low. "The lies multiply, mon ami. Lady Margaret's confession is a crack in the facade, but there are more secrets yet to surface. We must press further." Determined to follow the trail of the scepter's map, Sherlock requested Lord Reginald's assistance in returning to the East Wing's vault. The Lord, increasingly agitated, led them through the manor's labyrinthine corridors, muttering about the indignity of such intrusions. The vault, damp and shadowed, felt even more oppressive in the daylight, its stone walls echoing with the weight of centuries. Sherlock knelt beside the scuff mark Hastings had noticed the previous day, his magnifying glass revealing faint traces of wax, candle wax, to be precise. "Curious," he murmured. "Someone stood here, holding a candle, perhaps examining the ledger or searching for something else. The wax is fresh, no older than 2 days." Hastings frowned. "Crane, perhaps? Or his killer?" Sherlock nodded. "Possibly. But the wax is from a specific type of candle, tallow, not beeswax, unlike those used in the manor's candelabras. This suggests a servant or someone posing as one." Their exploration, thunderous, stormed into the cellar, followed by Inspector Grimsby. "Sherlock!" Sir Percival barked. "This is outrageous. Grimsby tells me you've dismissed the footman Thomas as a suspect, yet I saw him skulking near the library last night after the theft." Sherlock's eyes gleamed with interest.
You saw him, monsieur, at what time precisely? Sir Percival hesitated, his bluster faltering. Around 10:30, perhaps. He was lurking near the safe, looking guilty as sin. And you did not mention this earlier because? Sherlock's tone was mild, but his gaze was sharp as a blade. I thought it insignificant, Sir Percival muttered, his eyes avoiding Sherlock's. But with Crane's murder, I realized it might matter. Sherlock dismissed him with a nod, turning to Grimsby. Inspector, have you questioned Thomas about this alleged sighting? Grimsby nodded. He denies it, of course. Says he was in the servants' quarters all evening, but he's a liar, mark my words. Sherlock's smile was thin. We shall see, Inspector. Lies, like truths, have a way of revealing themselves. Later that afternoon, Sherlock summoned Miss Clara Beaumont to the library, where he questioned her about her garden walk. Under his gentle but relentless probing, she admitted to overhearing a heated argument between Sir Percival and Crane 2 nights before the murder. They were in the smoking room, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sir Percival was shouting about money, debts, I think. Mr. Crane said something about the scepter being tainted. Sherlock's eyebrows rose. Tainted, mademoiselle. An intriguing choice of words. Did you hear anything else? She shook her head, tears welling. No, I left. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but it frightened me. As Clara departed, Sherlock turned to Hastings, his expression one of quiet triumph. The lies surface, Hastings. Sir Percival's debts, Lady Margaret's bracelet, Crane's suspicions about the scepter, they form a pattern. The killer believes the scepter's secret will expose them, and they are desperate to keep it hidden. That evening, as the household gathered for a tense dinner, Sherlock observed each guest with renewed intensity. Dr. Warrender's hand lingered near his pocket again, Lady Eleanor's gaze darted nervously, and Sir Percival's cigar burned with unusual ferocity. The scepter, displayed once more, seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, its rubies catching the candlelight like drops of blood. As the meal ended, Sherlock rose, his voice cutting through the silence. Mesdames et messieurs, the Crimson Scepter is a key to a truth that someone in this room will kill to protect, but rest assured, Sherlock sees through the lies. The net is tightening. The guests dispersed, their faces etched with fear. Hastings, following Sherlock to their quarters, felt the mysteries. Sherlock, you're pushing them hard. What if the killer strikes again? Sherlock's eyes twinkled. Let them try, Hastings. Each lie they tell brings us closer to the truth. The scepter's secret is within our grasp, and I shall not rest until it is laid bare. As night fell over Ashbourne Hall, the mist thicker than ever, Hastings sensed the storm gathering. The Crimson Scepter's enigma was unraveling. But with each revelation came greater danger, and only Sherlock's genius could navigate the treacherous path ahead. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The 4th day at Ashbourne Hall dawned under a sky heavy with the threat of rain. The air thick with the scent of damp earth and impending revelation. The murder of Victor Crane and the thefts of Lady Margaret's bracelet had woven a web of suspicion that ensnared every occupant of the manor, and Captain Hastings could feel the tension coiling tighter with each passing hour. The Crimson Scepter, with its hidden compartment and cryptic map, stood at the heart of the mystery, a silent provocateur that seemed to taunt the household with its secrets. Sherlock, as ever, was the calm eye of the storm, his meticulous mind sifting through the lies and half-truths that had surfaced in the days prior. Hastings found Sherlock in the library, standing before the scepter, which had been placed on a velvet cushion for further examination. The detective's eyes were fixed on the 3rd ruby, 2nd facet, where the hidden compartment had revealed its tantalizing clue. In his hand was Crane's journal, its pages now marked with Sherlock's precise annotations. Hastings, sensing a shift in his friend's demeanor, approached cautiously. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, his voice low but vibrant with purpose. "We are at a turning point. The lies we have uncovered, Lady Margaret's concealed connection to the scepter, Sir Percival's debts, Miss Beaumont's overheard argument, they are but the surface of a deeper truth. Today, I believe, someone will break." Hastings frowned, his notebook clutched tightly. "Break, Sherlock? You mean confess?" Sherlock's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not confess, Hastings. Reveal. Under pressure, the human heart betrays its secrets. We must apply that pressure delicately, but firmly." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock. Dr. Julian Warrender entered, his scholarly air marred by a nervous tick at the corner of his mouth. "Monsieur Sherlock," he said, his voice strained, "I must speak with you privately. It concerns a matter of conscience." Sherlock's eyes gleamed with interest, though his expression remained impassive. "Doctor, your conscience is most welcome. Speak freely, but know that Captain Hastings is my confidant in all things." Dr. Warrender hesitated.
Forthcoming.
"The night of the theft, after administering Lady Margaret's sedative, I did not go directly to my room. I went to the library." Sherlock's eyebrows rose slightly. "The library, Doctor? To what purpose?" Dr. Warrender's hands trembled as he adjusted his spectacles. "I was concerned for Lady Margaret. Her distress over the bracelet seemed disproportionate, and I suspected she was hiding something. I wanted to check the scepter to see if it held any clues to her agitation. I found the safe locked, but I noticed a paper on the desk, a draft of Crane's letter warning of the scepter's secret." Sherlock leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And you did not mention this earlier because I feared it would implicate me," Dr. Warrender admitted, his voice breaking. "I am not a wealthy man, Monsieur Sherlock. My position here depends on the Ashbournes' goodwill. If it seemed I was meddling in their affairs, I could lose everything." Hastings, scribbling furiously, felt a surge of sympathy for the doctor, but Sherlock's expression remained unyielding. "Doctor, did you see Mr. Crane that night?" "No," Dr. Warrender said quickly. "The library was empty. I left after a few minutes and went to my room." Sherlock nodded, dismissing him with a wave. "Merci, Doctor. Your candor is noted." As Dr. Warrender departed, Hastings turned to Sherlock, his voice low. "Do you believe him, Sherlock?" He seemed genuinely shaken. Sherlock's eyes twinkled. "He is shaken, Hastings, but not necessarily by guilt. His confession is a partial truth, meant to deflect suspicion. The library at that hour, the draft letter, these are details that complicate our puzzle. We must verify his story." Determined to press further, Sherlock requested a private audience with Lady Eleanor, whose composure had begun to fray under the strain of the investigation. They met in her sitting room, a cozy space filled with books and needlework, where she stood by the window, her hands clasped tightly. "Madame," Sherlock began, his tone gentle but firm, "you have been a pillar of strength in this house, yet I sense you carry a burden. Tell me, what did you know of Mr. Crane's suspicions about the scepter?" Lady Eleanor's lips trembled, and for a moment Hastings thought she might refuse to answer. Then with a sigh she spoke. "Victor was more than a solicitor to us. He was a confidant. 2 weeks ago he came to me with concerns about the estate's finances. He said Sir Percival had been pressing Reginald to sell the scepter, claiming it would settle debts. Victor suspected the scepter itself was compromised." "Compromised, madam?" Sherlock pressed, his voice sharp. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. He believed it might be a replica to be discreet, but he was determined. Sherlock's fingers steepled, his mind clearly racing. "And you did not share this with me because I feared for Reginald," she whispered. "If the scepter is a fake, or if it hides a scandal, it could ruin us. I thought Victor's death might end the matter, but now I see it has only begun." The weight of her words hung in the air, and Hastings felt a chill. Lady Eleanor's confession, like Dr. Warrender's, was a crack in the manor's facade, revealing the depth of fear and deception that surrounded the scepter. Sherlock, however, remained calm, his eyes alight with the thrill of the chase. "Merci, madame," he said. "Your honesty brings us closer to the truth." As they left the sitting room, Sherlock drew Hastings aside. "The emotional tide is turning, Hastings. Lady Eleanor and Dr. Warrender have revealed pieces of the puzzle, but they protect others. Perhaps each other, perhaps someone else. We must now examine the vault again, with fresh eyes." Returning to the East Wing's cellar, Sherlock focused on the scuff mark and the tallow wax he had noted previously. Using a small knife, he carefully pried of the stone floor where the mark was deepest, revealing a concealed panel. Beneath it was a small, locked box, its surface etched with the Ashbourne crest. The lock, like the vault's door, bore fresh scratches, suggesting recent tampering. "Mon Dieu," Sherlock murmured, his voice vibrant with excitement. "This box is the treasure Crane sought, and the reason for his death. The killer knew he was close to uncovering it. With Lord Reginald's reluctant permission, they opened the box using a skeleton key provided by the butler. Inside was a single document, a deed dated 2 centuries prior, granting the Ashbourne stewardship of a hidden cache of jewels, entrusted to them by a royal fugitive. The scepter, it seemed, was not the treasure, but the key to its location, hidden somewhere within the manor. As they emerged from the vault, a scream echoed through the corridors. Miss Clara Beaumont, pale and trembling, stood at the top of the cellar stairs, her eyes wide with terror. "Monsieur Sherlock," she gasped, I found this in my room, slipped under the door." She held out a folded note, its message scrawled in a hurried hand. "Leave the scepter alone, or you will join Crane." Sherlock's expression was grim as he took the note. "The killer grows bold, Hastings. This threat is a sign of desperation. We are close, very close." As the household gathered for another tense evening, the weight of Lady... Chapter 9. The Trap. The air in Ashbourne Hall had grown stifling, as if the manor itself were holding its breath, awaiting the unraveling of the deadly enigma that gripped its inhabitants. The discovery of the hidden deed in the East Wing's vault, coupled with the threatening note slipped under Miss Clara Beaumont's door, had escalated the tension to a fever pitch. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal observer, felt the weight of the mystery pressing down, each new revelation tightening the noose around the unseen killer. Sherlock, however, was in his element, his precise movements and gleaming eyes betraying a mind that thrived on the complexity of the puzzle before him. By mid-morning, Sherlock had retreated to the library, where he spread out the scepter's map, Crane's journal, the ancient deed, and the threatening note on a polished mahogany table. Hastings, joining him, noted the detective's air of quiet determination, as if the pieces of the puzzle were finally aligning in his mind. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, his voice low and vibrant, "we have reached the moment of the trap. The killer is desperate, their threat to Mademoiselle Beaumont a sign of fear. Tonight we shall gather the household and apply the pressure that will force their hand." Hastings frowned, his notebook open but untouched. A trap, Sherlock. You mean to provoke the killer into revealing themselves? Sherlock's lips curved into a faint, almost mischievous smile. Precisely, Hastings. The human heart, when pressed, betrays its secrets. We shall stage a scene, a revelation about the scepter's true nature, and observe who flinches. To prepare, Sherlock requested a private meeting with Lord Reginald and Lady Eleanor in the drawing room. The siblings, both visibly strained, listened as Sherlock outlined his plan. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his tone commanding yet calm. "The Crimson Scepter is not merely a jewel, but a key to a hidden cache of royal jewels, as revealed by the deed in the vault. Tonight I shall announce that I have located this cache and intend to open it tomorrow. The killer, fearing exposure, will act." Lord Reginald's face reddened. "Open it? Monsieur Sherlock, this is madness. If such a cache exists, it belongs to the Ashbournes. You cannot simply—" Sherlock raised a hand, silencing him. "Monsieur, I have no intention of opening it, yet. This is a ruse to flush out the guilty. You must trust Sherlock's method." Lady Eleanor, her hands clasped tightly, nodded. "If it will bring justice for poor Mr. Crane, I consent. But be careful, monsieur. This killer is dangerous." With the plan set, Sherlock spent the afternoon examining the threatening note, its scrawled handwriting a stark contrast to Crane's meticulous script. Using his magnifying glass, he noted irregularities in the ink, faint smudges suggesting it had been written in haste, possibly with a fountain pen. "Curious," he murmured.
The pen is not one used by the servants, who favor simpler tools. This is the work of someone educated, someone with access to fine stationery. Hastings, peering over his shoulder, ventured a guess. Sir Percival, perhaps? He's always scribbling in that notebook of his. Sherlock's eyes twinkled. A possibility, Hastings, but we must not leap to conclusions. The note is a clue, but it is the reaction to our trap that will reveal the truth. As evening approached, Sherlock orchestrated the gathering with the precision of a conductor. The household assembled in the dining room, the Crimson Scepter once again displayed on a sideboard, its rubies glinting like eyes in the candlelight. The guests, their faces etched with unease, took their seats, each aware of the mounting pressure. Sir Percival Langley, his cigar unlit for once, sat with a scowl, his eyes darting toward the scepter. Lady Margaret, clinging to Dr. Warrender's arm, looked as if she might faint. Miss Clara Beaumont, still shaken by the note, kept her gaze fixed on her plate, while Lady Eleanor and Lord Reginald exchanged tense glances. Sherlock rose, his presence commanding silence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and resonant. "The investigation into Mr. Crane's murder and the theft of Lady Margaret's bracelet has led me to a startling discovery. The Crimson Scepter is not merely a jewel, but a key to a hidden cache of royal jewels, concealed within Ashbourne Hall for centuries. Tomorrow I shall open this cache, revealing its contents to all." A murmur rippled through the room, faces paling and eyes widening. Sir Percival's jaw tightened, his fingers clenching the tablecloth. Lady Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her throat, while Dr. Warrender's eyes narrowed, his hand slipping into his pocket. Miss Beaumont's fork trembled and Lady Eleanor's lips parted in a silent protest. Lord Reginald, his face flushed, slammed his fist on the table. "This is outrageous," he bellowed. "The scepter is an Ashbourne heirloom. You have no right to meddle in our affairs." Sherlock's smile was serene. "Monsieur, I seek only justice. The cache may hold the key to Mr. Crane's murder, a motive that someone in this room wishes to conceal." The tension was palpable, the air thick with unspoken accusations. As the meal concluded, Sherlock lingered, observing each guest's departure. Hastings, standing beside him, whispered, "Did you see their faces, Sherlock? They're all terrified." Sherlock nodded, his eyes fixed on Dr. Warrender, who had paused at the door, his hand still in his pocket. "Indeed, Hastings, the trap is set, and the killer is caught in its jaws. They will act tonight, and we must be ready." After dinner, Sherlock requested a private word with Inspector Grimsby, who had returned from questioning the footman Thomas.
The inspector, still smarting from Sherlock's earlier dismissal, was reluctant, but listened as the detective outlined his plan to patrol the East Wing that night, anticipating an attempt to access the vault. "Mon ami," Sherlock said to Hastings as they prepared for the vigil, "the killer believes the cache will expose them, perhaps a secret tied to the scepter's authenticity or the estate's finances. We must watch the vault, the scepter, and the guests." Under the cover of darkness, Sherlock and Hastings stationed themselves in the shadows of the East Wing cellar, the damp air chilling their bones. The manor was silent, save for the creak of floorboards and the distant howl of the wind. Hours passed, the tension mounting, until a faint sound, a soft footfall, echoed from the staircase. Sherlock's hand tightened on Hastings' arm, his whisper barely audible. "They come, Hastings. Be still." A figure, cloaked and hooded, descended into the cellar, moving with the stealth of one accustomed to secrecy. The figure approached the vault, producing a key that glinted in the dim light. As they fumbled with the lock, Sherlock stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence. "Bonsoir," he said, his tone calm but commanding. "You are late, but Sherlock is patient." The figure froze, then turned, revealing a face contorted with fear. It was Dr. Warrender, his spectacles glinting, a small pistol in his trembling hand. "Stay back, Sherlock," he hissed. "You don't understand what's at stake." Hastings' heart pounded, but Sherlock remained unruffled. "Doctor, I understand perfectly. The scepter, the cache, the deed, they point to a secret you cannot allow to be revealed. But murder? That was a miscalculation." Dr. Warrender's hand shook, the pistol wavering. "Crane was going to ruin everything. He found the deed. Suspected the scepter was a fake. I had to stop him." Before Sherlock could respond, a shout echoed from above. Inspector Grimsby, alerted by a servant, charged down the stairs with 2 constables. Dr. Warrender, panicked, dropped the pistol and bolted, only to be apprehended by the constables at the vault's entrance. As the doctor was led away, Sherlock turned to Hastings, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "The trap has sprung, mon ami. But the puzzle is not yet complete. Dr. Warrender is a piece, but not the whole." The night's events left Ashbourne Hall in turmoil, the guests reeling from the doctor's unmasking. But Hastings, watching Sherlock's calm demeanor, knew the detective's mind was already racing towards the final revelation, the Crimson Scepter's enigma closer than ever to being solved. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The capture of Dr. Julian Warrender in the shadowed cellar of Ashbourne Hall sent shockwaves through the manor. Yet Captain Hastings sensed that the mystery of the Crimson Scepter was far from resolved. Roused by the commotion of the doctor's arrest, gathered in the drawing room, their faces a gallery of fear, relief, and lingering suspicion. Sherlock, standing by the fireplace with the scepter gleaming on a nearby table, commanded the room with his serene authority, his eyes alight with the clarity of a mind that had pieced together the final threads of the enigma. Hastings, seated with his notebook, felt the weight of anticipation. Dr. Warrender's desperate confession in the cellar had been a revelation, but Sherlock's cryptic remark that the doctor was a piece, but not the whole, hinted at a deeper truth. The detective's trap had instead one culprit, but the mastermind behind Victor Crane's murder and the theft of Lady Margaret's bracelet remained elusive. Sherlock began, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the murmurs of the assembled company. "Mesdames et messieurs, the events of last night have brought us to the heart of this affair. The Crimson Scepter, with its hidden compartment and ancient deed, is not merely a jewel but a key to a secret that has cost Mr. Victor Crane his life. Dr. Warrender, in his panic, revealed his role, but he is not the architect of this crime.
Allow Sherlock to explain." The guests leaned forward, their expressions ranging from dread to curiosity. Lord Reginald, his face flushed, gripped the arm of his chair. Lady Margaret, pale and trembling, clung to Lady Eleanor, who stood rigid with apprehension. Sir Percival Langley, his cigar absent for once, fixed Sherlock with a hard stare, while Miss Clara Beaumont twisted her handkerchief, her eyes wide with fear. Sherlock paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us begin with the facts. On the night of the scepter's unveiling, Lady Margaret's bracelet, a family heirloom with a sapphire clasp matching the scepter's stone, was stolen. This act, I submit, was a diversion, meant to create chaos and distract from a greater crime. The following morning, Mr. Crane was found dead, struck by a candelabrum at the foot of the grand staircase. The blow was precise, delivered from above, suggesting familiarity and trust between victim and killer." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "Mr. Crane, as executor of the Ashbourne estate, had uncovered irregularities, debts, disputed inheritances, and a suspicion that the scepter was not what it seemed. His journal and the hidden deed in the vault confirmed that the scepter was a key to a cache of royal jewels hidden centuries ago by a fugitive king. Crane's discovery threatened someone in this room, someone whose position depended on that secret remaining buried." Sir Percival snorted. "This is all speculation, Sherlock. You've caught Warrender. Case closed."
Scepter's secret would ruin him. But why? What drove a quiet physician to such violence? The answer lies in a conspiracy, a partnership, if you will. He turned to the scepter, lifting it with gloved hands. The third ruby, second facet, conceals a compartment, as we know. But the deed within points to a vault beneath the east wing, containing a ledger and a locked box. The box held a deed to a royal cache, but it also revealed a motive. The scepter itself is a replica, crafted to conceal the theft of the original centuries ago. The true scepter, with its priceless jewels, was sold to cover Ashbourne debts, and the replica was created to maintain the family's honor. A gasp rippled through the room. Lord Reginald's face turned ashen. "A replica? Impossible. The scepter has been in our family for generations." Sherlock's eyes gleamed. "Not impossible, monsieur, but cleverly concealed. Mr. Crane suspected this, as did Lady Margaret, whose bracelet bore a sapphire from the original scepter. A relic her family preserved as proof of the truth. The theft of the bracelet was no random act. It was meant to remove evidence of the scepter's fraud." Lady Margaret's hand flew to her throat. "My bracelet? You mean it was stolen to protect this secret?" "Oui, madame," Sherlock said. "But the theft was merely the prelude. Mr. Crane's murder was the true crime, orchestrated by one who stood to lose everything if the scepter's replica status was exposed. Dr. Warrender struck the fatal blow, but he did so at the behest of another, a mind more cunning, more ruthless." Sherlock turned to Lady Eleanor, his voice softening. "Madame, you have been the soul of this household, yet you carry a heavy burden. It was you who orchestrated this affair, was it not? The room froze, all eyes on Lady Eleanor. Her composure shattered, her hands trembling as she clutched her shawl. Monsieur Sherlock, you cannot believe. I do not believe, madame. I know. Sherlock interrupted, his tone firm but not unkind. You alone had the knowledge and the opportunity. Crane confided in you about his suspicions, and you saw the ruin that would follow if the scepter's secret was revealed. Your family's steady.
Dr. Warrender, infatuated with you, agreed to strike Crane, using the candelabrum to make it seem an impulsive act. The threatening note to Miss Beaumont was your final attempt to divert suspicion, written in haste with your own fountain pen. But the little grey cells, madame, they see through such deceptions. Inspector Grimsby, standing at the door, stepped forward, his face grim. Lady Eleanor, I'm afraid you must come with us. As she was led away, her head bowed. The room fell silent, the weight of her confession settling over the guests. Sir Percival, his bluster gone, stared at the floor. Lady Margaret sobbed quietly, while Miss Beaumont clung to Dr. Warrender, who awaited his own fate. Lord Reginald sank into his chair, his world shattered. Sherlock turned to Hastings, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. The puzzle is complete, mon ami. The scepter's secret is laid bare, and justice is served. As the guests dispersed, the Crimson Scepter gleamed on its pedestal, its rubies no longer menacing, but merely beautiful. Hastings, watching Sherlock, felt a mix of awe and melancholy. The case was solved, but at a cost. The unraveling of a family's honor, the exposure of a sister's desperation. Sherlock, he said softly, you knew it was Lady Eleanor all along, didn't you? Sherlock's eyes twinkled. Not all along, Hastings, but the contradictions, her composure, her knowledge of Crane's suspicions, her subtle influence over Warrender, they pointed to her. The little grey cells, they do not lie. As the rain continued to fall, Sherlock prepared to depart Ashbourne Hall, his work done. The Crimson Scepter, now revealed as a replica, would no longer cast its shadow over the manor, but its legacy of deceit would linger, a testament to the power of Sherlock's genius. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The rain that had lashed Ashbourne Hall through the night had softened to a gentle drizzle by morning, casting a mournful veil over the manor's ancient stones. The revelation of Lady Eleanor's guilt, coupled with Warrender's complicity in the murder of Victor Crane, had left the household in a state of stunned silence. The Crimson Scepter, now exposed as a replica concealing a centuries-old secret, stood on its pedestal in the library, its rubies dulled by the weight of the—
Turning to Hastings with a faint smile. You look as if the weight of Ashbourne Hall rests upon your shoulders. The case is closed, the guilty unmasked. Why so somber? Hastings sighed, setting his notebook aside. It's just Lady Eleanor, Sherlock. She acted out of loyalty to her family, to protect her brother. And Dr. Warrender, he was driven by devotion to her. It's tragic, don't you think? Sherlock's eyes gleamed with a mixture of amusement and wisdom. Tragic, perhaps, Hastings, but tragedy does not absolve crime. Lady Eleanor chose to protect the Ashbourne legacy at the cost of a man's life. Dr. Warrender, blinded by affection, became her instrument. The little grey cells, they do not excuse such choices, they merely uncover them. Hastings nodded, though his heart remained heavy. I suppose you're right. But the scepter, what happens to it now? And the hidden cache of jewels? Will Lord Reginald pursue it? Sherlock moved to the scepter, lifting it with gloved hands to examine it one final time. The scepter, Hastings, is a relic of deception, a beautiful lie crafted to conceal a theft centuries ago. The deed we found suggests a cache of royal jewels, but whether it still exists is uncertain. Lord Reginald may search for it, but I suspect the true treasure was the illusion of the Ashbourne honor, now shattered. He placed the scepter back on its pedestal, his fingers lingering on the third ruby, second facet. As for the cache, I have advised Inspector Grimsby to secure the vault and its contents for further investigation. The Crown may have an interest, given the deed's royal origins. But for Sherlock, the matter is concluded. The puzzle is solved, the truth revealed. The door opened and Lord Reginald entered, his robust frame diminished by the weight of his sister's confession. His eyes, red-rimmed and weary, met Sherlock's with a mixture of gratitude and resentment. "Monsieur Sherlock," he said, his voice hoarse, "you have brought justice to my house, but at what cost? My sister, my family's name." Sherlock inclined his head, his tone gentle but firm. "Monsieur, the truth is a harsh light, but it is better to live in its glare than in the shadow of a lie. Your sister acted to protect you, but her choice led to murder. Justice, not Sherlock, demands its price." Lord Reginald nodded, his shoulders sagging. "I suppose I must thank you, though my heart is heavy. What will become of Eleanor?" "Lady Eleanor and Dr. Warrender will face the law," Sherlock replied. "Their motives, however noble, cannot erase their actions. But you, monsieur, have the chance to rebuild, honestly, without the
Remainder of the morning passed quietly, with Sherlock overseeing the transfer of evidence to Inspector Grimsby, who, despite his earlier resentment, had come to grudgingly admire the detective's genius. The threatening note, Crane's journal, the deed, and the scepter itself were catalogued, each piece a testament to the intricate web Sherlock had unraveled. As they prepared to depart Ashbourne Hall, Sherlock took a final walk through the manor's grounds, Hastings at his side. The mist had lifted slightly, revealing the rolling hills of Devonshire, their beauty undiminished by the tragedy within the manor's walls. Sherlock paused by a stone bench, his gaze distant. "Hastings," he said softly, "the human heart is a complex thing, full of contradictions. Lady Eleanor loved her family, yet her love led to betrayal. Dr. Warrender's devotion became his downfall. It is a reminder, mon ami, that even the noblest motives can lead to darkness." Hastings nodded, struck by the depth of Sherlock's insight. "You see so much, Sherlock, things the rest of us miss. How do you bear it, knowing the flaws in everyone?" Sherlock's smile was wistful. "It is not a burden, Hastings, but a privilege. To see the truth, to bring order to chaos. That is the work of the little grey cells. And when the puzzle is solved, there is a certain satisfaction." They returned to the manor to collect their belongings, passing the library where the scepter stood,
its rubies no longer menacing, but merely beautiful. Miss Clara Beaumont, who had emerged from her fear to offer a tearful farewell, thanked Sherlock for his protection. Lady Margaret, still fragile, managed a nod of gratitude, while Sir Percival Langley, his bluster subdued, offered a curt handshake. As their carriage rolled away from Ashbourne Hall, the manor's towers fading into the mist, Hastings glanced at Sherlock, who sat in silence, his eyes half closed. "What now, Sherlock?" he asked. "Back to London and a quiet life?" Sherlock chuckled, a rare sound that warmed the chilly air. "Quiet, Hastings. Never. The world is full of puzzles, and Sherlock is never idle. There will always be another mystery, another challenge for the little grey cells." The carriage rattled on, carrying them toward the train station and the familiar bustle of London. Hastings, reflecting on the case, felt a renewed admiration for his friend's genius. The Crimson Scepter, with its secrets and its curse, had tested Sherlock's skill, but he had emerged triumphant, his logic and insight piercing the darkness of human deceit. As the manor vanished from view, Hastings opened his notebook, beginning to record the tale of the Crimson Scepter, a story of greed, loyalty, and the relentless pursuit of truth.
Echoes of truth. The departure from Ashbourne Hall left a lingering melancholy in Captain Hastings' heart as the carriage rolled through the mist-draped lanes of Devonshire toward the train station. The resolution of the Crimson Scepter's enigma, with Lady Eleanor and Dr. Warrender unmasked as the culprits behind Victor Crane's murder, had brought justice, but also a profound sense of loss. The manor, once a bastion of aristocratic pride, now stood as a monument to shattered illusions, its secrets laid bare by Sherlock's unrelenting logic. Hastings, glancing at his friend, noted the detective's serene composure, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had engulfed the household. Sherlock sat with his hands folded neatly in his lap, his eyes half closed, as if savoring the afterglow of a puzzle solved. The rain had ceased, and a pale sun broke through the clouds, casting fleeting rays across the rolling hills. Hastings, ever the chronicler, opened his notebook, his pen poised to capture the final reflections of the case. But his thoughts were interrupted by Sherlock's soft voice. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, his tone reflective. "You are troubled still by the fate of Lady Eleanor and Dr. Warrender. Yet justice, Hastings, is not always a balm for the heart. It is a necessity, a structure upon which order rests." Hastings sighed, his gaze fixed on the passing landscape. "I know you're right, Sherlock, but it's hard to see a family torn apart like that. Lady Eleanor acted out of loyalty, misguided as it was. And Dr. Warrender, he was in love, wasn't he? It's a pity, that's all." Sherlock's lips curved into a faint smile, though his eyes held a trace of melancholy. "The human heart, Hastings, is a labyrinth. Loyalty, love, these are powerful forces, but when they lead to murder, they must be judged. Lady Eleanor's devotion to her brother drove her to orchestrate a crime, and Dr. Warrender's affection made him her willing accomplice. The little grey cells, they see the truth, but they do not soften it." The carriage slowed as they approached the village of Ashbourne, where the train to London awaited. The station was a modest affair, its platform bustling with villagers and travellers, their voices a low hum against the clatter of the approaching locomotive. As they alighted, Sherlock paused to survey the scene, his sharp eyes noting every detail: the porter's hurried gait, the flutter of a newspaper in the breeze, the furtive glance of a man in a worn overcoat. "Hastings," Sherlock said suddenly, his voice low, "observe that man by the ticket office. His posture, his haste, does he not seem familiar?" Hastings squinted, following Sherlock's gaze. The man, thin and stooped, was indeed familiar, Thomas, the footman Inspector Grimsby had briefly
From justice. Thomas was a red herring, as I suspected, but his presence here is no coincidence. Come, let us have a word. They approached the footman, who started at the sight of Sherlock, his face paling.
Monsieur Sherlock?
He stammered, clutching a small valise. I ain't done nothing wrong, I swear. Sherlock's tone was calm but firm. Monsieur Thomas, your innocence in Mr. Crane's murder is established, but your haste intrigues me. Why leave Ashbourne so suddenly? Thomas's eyes darted nervously. I was sacked, sir, after the bracelet business. I didn't steal it, but no one believes me. I'm heading to London to find work. Sherlock studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well, but a word of advice. The truth is your best ally. If you know anything more of the events at Ashbourne Hall, speak now. Thomas hesitated, then shook his head. I don't, sir. I saw nothing, heard nothing. I just want to be gone from that cursed place. Sherlock dismissed him with a wave, and as Thomas scurried away, Hastings frowned. Do you believe him, Sherlock? He seemed awfully jittery. He is frightened, Hastings, but not of us, Sherlock replied. The shadow of the scepter lingers, even for those on the periphery. His departure is prudent, but it tells us little. The train's whistle sounded, and they boarded, settling into a first-class compartment. As the countryside rolled past, Hastings returned to his notebook, jotting down the final details of the case. The Crimson Scepter, a replica crafted to conceal a historic theft, had been the catalyst for greed and desperation. Lady Eleanor, fearing the exposure of her family's fraud, had orchestrated Crane's murder, manipulating Dr. Warrender's devotion to execute her plan. The theft of Lady Margaret's bracelet, with its sapphire linked to the original scepter, had been a calculated distraction, designed to sow confusion. Sherlock, Hastings ventured, closing his notebook. Do you think the royal cash still exists? The deed suggested it's hidden somewhere in the manor, but we never found it. Sherlock's eyes gleamed with a spark of amusement. The cash, Hastings, is likely a myth, or long since plundered. The deed was a relic of hope, a promise the Ashbournes clung to through their financial ruin. Its true value was in the secret it protected, the scepter's falsity. Crane's discovery of that secret sealed his fate. Hastings nodded, struck by the elegance of Sherlock's reasoning. And the bracelet? Do you think it will ever be found? Sherlock shrugged, a rare gesture of indifference. The bracelet was likely destroyed or hidden beyond reach, its sapphire too dangerous a clue. Lady Eleanor was thorough, if nothing else. Hastings, that the past is never truly buried. Secrets, like roots, grow deep, and when they surface, they bring chaos. Yet order can be restored if one has the patience to see clearly. Hastings smiled, his admiration for his friend undimmed. You restored order, Sherlock. The Ashbournes may never recover, but justice was done. Sherlock's smile was faint but genuine. Justice, mon ami, is the foundation of order. And now we return to London, where new puzzles await. The little grey cells, they are never idle. The train pulled into Paddington Station, the bustle of the city a stark contrast to the sombre quiet of Ashbourne Hall. As they stepped onto the platform, Hastings felt a sense of closure. Though the echoes of the case, the scepter's gleam, Lady Eleanor's tears, Crane's lifeless form would linger in his memory. He opened his notebook once more, determined to preserve the tale for posterity, a testament to Sherlock's genius and the enduring power of truth. As they hailed a hansom cab, Sherlock glanced at the sky, now clearing
to reveal a pale blue. "A new day, Hastings," he said softly, "and with it, new mysteries. Let us be ready." The cab rolled toward Baker Street, carrying Sherlock and Hastings back to their familiar world, where the game was always afoot and the little grey cells ever vigilant. Chapter 13. The Lingering Shadows. The return to London brought with it a sense of relief for Captain Hastings, as the familiar clamour of the city replaced the oppressive silence of Ashburn Hall. Yet the case of the Crimson Scepter lingered in his mind, its echoes of betrayal and hidden truths casting long shadows over his thoughts. The train journey had been quiet, with Sherlock immersed in a contemplative silence, his sharp eyes occasionally scanning the horizon, as if seeking the next puzzle to challenge his little grey cells. Now, settled in the comfort of their Baker Street lodgings, Hastings felt compelled to revisit the case, his notebook open, as he sought to capture its final nuances. Sherlock, seated in his armchair by the fire, was polishing his magnifying glass with a silk handkerchief, his movements precise and deliberate. The afternoon light streamed through the window, illuminating the clutter of books, papers, and scientific instruments that defined their shared quarters. Hastings, glancing at his friend, noted a rare softness in Sherlock's expression, as if the resolution of the case had left him momentarily introspective. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, breaking the silence. "You are still scribbling in that notebook of yours. The case is closed, the guilty apprehended. Yet I sense you are not at peace." Hastings set his pen down, his brow furrowed.
Wonder what else in that family was built on lies.
Sherlock's lips curved into a faint smile, his eyes gleaming with wisdom. "The human condition, Hastings, is a tapestry, woven with truth and deception. The Ashbournes clung to the illusion of their grandeur, and the Crimson Scepter was its symbol. When Mr. Crane threatened to unravel that illusion, Lady Eleanor chose murder over disgrace. It is not for us to judge their hearts, only their actions." Hastings nodded, though his thoughts drifted to the manor's other inhabitants, Miss Clara Beaumont, whose innocence had been overshadowed by fear, Sir Percival Langley, whose bluster masked his own financial desperation, Lady Margaret, whose stolen bracelet had been a key to the scepter's secret. "Do you think they'll ever recover, Sherlock? Lord Reginald especially. He seemed broken by Eleanor's confession." Sherlock set the magnifying glass aside, his gaze distant. "Lord Reginald will endure, as the English aristocracy so often does. He has wealth, if not honour, to rebuild upon. The scepter's exposure as a replica may free him from its curse, though it will take time. As for the others, they will carry their own shadows, guilt, fear, or relief, depending on their roles." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Mrs. Hudson, their landlady, entered with a telegram, her face creased with curiosity. "This just arrived for you, Mr. Sherlock," she said, handing him the envelope before retreating. Sherlock opened it, his eyes scanning the brief message. "Most intriguing," he murmured, passing it to Hastings. The telegram was from Inspector Grimsby, brief but startling. "Vault searched again. No cash found. Deed likely a myth. Scepter secured for Crown. Grimsby." Hastings frowned, handing the telegram back. "No cash? So the royal jewels were just a legend after all?" Sherlock's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, Hastings. Or perhaps they were removed long ago. Their theft, the true secret the scepter was crafted to conceal. The deed we found was a relic of hope, not proof. The Crown will decide the scepter's fate, but for us, the case is closed." Hastings leaned back, his mind turning over the implications. "And the bracelet? Lady Margaret's heirloom. Do you think it's truly gone?" Sherlock's eyes twinkled. "The bracelet with its sapphire from the original scepter, was too dangerous to remain. I suspect Lady Eleanor ensured its destruction, or it lies hidden where none will find it. Its theft was a masterstroke, Hastings, a distraction that nearly succeeded. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the room, and Hastings felt a sense of closure settling over him. The Crimson Scepter had been a puzzle of deception, its beauty masking a legacy of greed and betrayal. See through the lies, the distractions, and find the truth every time. Sherlock leaned forward, his hands steepled, his voice low and earnest. It is a matter of method, Hastings. The little grey cells, they observe, they analyze, they seek the contradiction. In every lie, there is a truth struggling to emerge. One must only listen to it. Hastings smiled, his admiration for his friend undimmed. You make it sound so simple, but I know it's not. This case, it was one of your finest, wasn't it? Sherlock's expression softened, a rare moment of humility. It was a challenge, mon ami. But every case is a lesson in human nature. The Crimson Scepter taught us that even the grandest facades can crumble under the weight of truth. As evening fell, Sherlock rose, retrieving a violin from its case. He began to play, the mournful strains filling the room, a fitting elegy for the tragedy of Ashbourne Hall. Hastings returned to his notebook, his pen moving swiftly as he recorded the final chapter of the case. The unmasking of Lady Eleanor, the fall of Dr. Warrender, and the exposure of the scepter's secret. The tale was one of loss, but also of justice, a testament to Sherlock's relentless pursuit of order in a world of chaos. Outside, London bustled on, its streets alive with the promise of new mysteries. Hastings, glancing at Sherlock, knew that his friend was already anticipating the next challenge. His little grey cells, ever vigilant. The Crimson Scepter was behind them, but its echoes would linger, a reminder of the delicate balance between truth and deception and the genius required to navigate it. Chapter 14. The Final Threads. The soft glow of gaslights illuminated the familiar clutter of 221B Baker Street, casting long shadows across the room as Captain Hastings sat by the fire, his notebook open on his lap. The case of the Crimson Scepter, with its intricate web of deceit and tragedy, had left an indelible mark on his mind, and he felt compelled to capture every nuance before the details faded. The revelation that the scepter was a replica, concealing a centuries-old fraud, and the unmasking of Lady Eleanor and Dr. Warrender as the architects of Victor Crane's murder had brought closure, yet questions lingered. Sherlock, seated across from him, was engrossed in a chemical experiment, his precise movements a stark contrast to the emotional weight of the case they had just concluded. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, glancing up from his vials. "You are still scribbling, as if the Crimson Scepter holds yet more secrets. The case is solved, the guilty apprehended. What troubles you now?" Hastings set his pen down, his brow furrowed. "It's not trouble, exactly, Sherlock. It's just, there are loose ends. The royal cache that carefully measured a drop of liquid into a beaker. Your heart, Hastings, is ever sentimental. The loose ends, as you call them, are not mysteries but the natural fraying of human affairs. The cache was likely a myth, plundered long ago or never existent. The bracelet, a relic of the true scepter, was destroyed or hidden to protect the Ashbourne secret. As for the family, their collapse was inevitable. Their honor was built on a lie." Hastings nodded, though his thoughts drifted to the faces of the manor's inhabitants, Lord Reginald's shattered pride, Miss Clara Beaumont's quiet fear, Sir Percival Langley's subdued bluster. "I suppose you're right, Sherlock. But what about Thomas, the footman? His sudden departure seemed suspicious, even if he wasn't the killer." Sherlock set his experiment aside, his expression one of mild indulgence. Thomas was a peripheral figure, Hastings, caught in the storm of greater motives. His flight was born of fear, not guilt. The manor's atmosphere, poisoned by suspicion, drove him to seek a new start. The little grey cells, they do not linger on such minor players when the puzzle is complete. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a letter, delivered by a breathless messenger boy. Mrs. Hudson, never efficient, brought it to Sherlock, who opened it with a flick of his penknife. The letter was from Miss Clara Beaumont, her elegant handwriting betraying a tremor of emotion. She wrote to thank Sherlock for his work, expressing her relief at the case's resolution, but also her sorrow for the Ashbourne family's fall. Tucked within the letter was a small folded note, which she claimed to have found in her late cousin's belongings, a final message from Victor Crane. Sherlock unfolded the note, his eyes narrowing as he read its contents aloud. To whom it may concern. If I am found dead, know that my suspicions about the Crimson Scepter were correct. The truth lies not in its jewels, but in its purpose. Seek the Guardian's Pact. V.C. Hastings leaned forward, his heart quickening. Good heavens, Sherlock! Crane knew he was in danger. This Guardian's Pact, it must be tied to the deed we found. Sherlock's fingers steepled, his mind clearly racing. Indeed, Hastings, the pact mentioned in the vault's ledger was an agreement to protect the scepter's secret, a vow the Ashbournes upheld at great cost. Crane's note confirms he was close to exposing it, which is why Lady Eleanor acted. This note, though, is a curiosity. Why did Miss Beaumont find it only now? Hastings frowned. Do you think she's hiding something? Not hiding, Sherlock replied, but perhaps unaware of its significance. Miss Beaumont is an innocent in this affair, her role limited to overhearing arguments and receiving threats. Yet this note suggests Crane entrusted her, perhaps indirectly, with a final clue. Determined to tie up a telegram to Inspector Grimsby, inquiring about the status of the scepter and the vault's contents. The reply arrived swiftly, confirming that the scepter had been sent to London for examination by Crown experts, who were investigating its authenticity and the deed's claims. The vault, searched thoroughly, had yielded no further evidence of a royal cache, supporting Sherlock's theory that it was a myth or long since plundered. As evening fell, Sherlock invited Hastings to join him for a walk along Baker Street, the crisp air a welcome change from the stuffy warmth of their lodgings. The city bustled around them, its energy a stark contrast to the sombre quiet of Ashbourne Hall. Sherlock, his scarf tucked neatly around his neck, walked with a purposeful stride, his mind still turning over the case's finer points. Hastings, he said, pausing by a street lamp, the Crimson Scepter was a puzzle of human nature as much as of crime. Lady Eleanor's loyalty, Dr. Warrender's devotion, Crane's curiosity, they are all driven by the same impulse, to protect or uncover the truth. Yet truth, mon ami, is a double-edged sword. It liberates, but it also destroys. Hastings nodded, his thoughts drifting to the manor's final moments, the tearful farewells, the weight of betrayal. You gave them the truth, Sherlock, even if it hurt. That's what you do, isn't it? Cut through the lies, no matter the cost. Sherlock's smile was faint but genuine. It is my method, Hastings. The little grey cells, they seek order, and order comes only through clarity. The scepter's secret was a lie that festered for centuries. By exposing it, we have set the Ashbournes free, though they may not thank us for it. They returned to Baker Street, where Sherlock resumed his chemical experiment, his focus shifting to new challenges. Hastings, settling into his armchair, opened his notebook once more, determined to complete the chronicle of the Crimson Scepter. The case had been a labyrinth of motives and deceptions, but Sherlock's genius had navigated it with unerring precision, revealing the truth beneath the manor's gilded facade. As the fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the room, Hastings penned the final lines of the chapter, his words a tribute to his friend's relentless pursuit of justice. The Crimson Scepter, with its false rubies and hidden truths, was behind them, but its lessons of loyalty, betrayal, and the enduring power of truth would remain, etched in the pages of his notebook and the annals of Sherlock's extraordinary career. Chapter 15. The Final Curtain. The soft hum of London life filtered through the windows of 221B Baker Street, a comforting contrast to the oppressive silence that had cloaked Ashbourne Hall during the brimming with the details of a mystery that had tested even Sherlock's formidable intellect. The exposure of Lady Eleanor as the mastermind behind Victor Crane's murder, with Dr. Warrender as her reluctant accomplice, had brought justice, but it had also left a trail of broken lives in its wake. The scepter, revealed as a replica concealing a centuries-old fraud, had been sent to the crown, its fate no longer Sherlock's concern. Sherlock himself sat by the fire, his violin resting on his knee, the bow poised but still. His eyes, usually so piercing, held a rare softness, as if the resolution of the case had left him momentarily reflective. Hastings, glancing at his friend, sensed that this moment of quiet was as much part of Sherlock's method as his relentless pursuit of truth. A pause to savor the order restored from chaos. "Mon ami," Sherlock said, his voice low and melodic, "you have filled that notebook with the tale of the Crimson Scepter, yet I sense you are reluctant to close it. Is there some final question that lingers?" Hastings set his pen down, a rueful smile crossing his face. "You know me too well, Sherlock. It's not a question exactly, just a feeling. The Ashbournes, Miss Beaumont, even Sir Percival, they're all left to pick up the pieces, and that royal cache never found. It feels unfinished somehow." Sherlock's lips curved into a faint smile, his fingers brushing the violin strings. "Unfinished, Hastings? No, the case is complete. The royal cache, if it ever existed, was likely plundered long ago, its myth preserved to bolster the Ashbourne legacy. The scepter's replica was the true secret, and its exposure was the key to Crane's murder. As for the Ashbournes, they must face their future without the crutch of a lie. That is not unfinished, it is life." Hastings nodded, struck by the simplicity of Sherlock's perspective. "You're right, of course. But I can't help feeling for them. Lord Reginald especially. He seemed so lost without his sister." Sherlock's gaze grew distant, his voice softening. "Lord Reginald will endure, as men of his station often do. His sister's actions, though born of loyalty, were a betrayal of justice. The little grey cells, they do not pity such choices. They merely reveal them." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Mrs. Hudson entered, bearing a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. "This came for you, Mr. Sherlock," she said, her curiosity barely concealed. "From Devonshire, by the look of it." Sherlock opened the parcel, revealing a letter and a small, velvet-lined box. The letter was from Miss Clara Beaumont, her handwriting steady but tinged with emotion. She wrote of her departure from Ashbourne Hall, intending to start anew in London, far from the manor's shadows. The box, she explained, contained a token of gratitude, a single ruby, small but flawless, which she claimed had been part of her late mother's collection, untainted by the scepter's curse. Sherlock examined the ruby, holding it to the light, where it gleamed with a deep, unblemished fire. "A generous gesture," he murmured. "Though I suspect Miss Beaumont seeks to sever all ties with the past, this ruby is her farewell to Ashbourne." Hastings, peering at the gem, felt a pang of curiosity. "Do you think it's connected to the scepter, Sherlock? Another piece of the original, perhaps?" Sherlock shook his head, placing the ruby back in its box. "No, Hastings. It is merely a jewel, free of the scepter's taint. Miss Beaumont's gift is a symbol of her resilience,
Nothing more. He handed the box to Hastings, who tucked it away with a sense of finality. "What will you do with it?" Hastings asked. Sherlock shrugged, a rare gesture of indifference. "It will remain here, a memento of a case well solved. The Crimson Scepter's true value was in the truth it concealed, not in its stones." As evening deepened, Sherlock took up his violin, the mournful strains filling the room with a haunting melody. Hastings returned to his notebook, his pen moving swiftly as he completed the chronicle of the case. The Crimson Scepter had been a puzzle of human frailty, greed, loyalty, and desperation, woven into a tapestry of deceit. Lady Eleanor's calculated murder of Crane, Dr. Warrender's complicity, the theft of Lady Margaret's bracelet, all had been unraveled by Sherlock's relentless logic, his little grey cells piercing the darkness with unerring clarity. The music paused, and Sherlock spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hastings, the world is full of scepters, symbols of power and pride that hide their flaws. It is our task to see beyond them, to find the truth that lies beneath. That is the work of the detective, and it is never done." Hastings smiled, his admiration for his friend undimmed. "You've done it again, Sherlock. You've brought order to chaos, and I dare say the world is better for it." Sherlock's eyes twinkled, and he resumed his playing, the notes soaring with a quiet triumph. The case of the Crimson Scepter was closed, its secrets laid bare. But the game, as Sherlock so often said, was always afoot. Hastings closed his notebook, content to let the tale stand as a testament to his friend's genius, a story of a scepter that glittered with lies, and the man who saw through them to the heart of truth. Outside, London pulsed with life, its streets alive with new mysteries waiting to be solved. As the fire crackled and the violins sang, Hastings knew that Sherlock was ready for whatever lay ahead, his little grey cells ever vigilant, poised to unravel the next enigma